Ever since we were kids, we've been conditioned to accept an age-old cartoon formula. The episode ends, and the status quo is restored. Nobody carries any trauma, and nobody actually grows. And if there's one franchise that milked this formula dry for decades, it's definitely the one with that famously cowardly dog and his meddling kids. Everyone remembers the classic setup: a fake monster, a trap, the unmasked villain, and case closed. But what if you took this exact same gang and dropped them into a universe where actions have real consequences? A world where the plot features highly toxic love triangles, parents acting like absolute scumbags, a psychopathic parrot, and an overarching mystery covering up a cosmic apocalypse. That's exactly what today's show delivers. Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated is essentially the nostalgic adventure you already know, but with a serialized, much darker twist. This show features fearless writing, exploring the psychological toll of solving crimes and the profound strain it puts on the gang's relationships. So, today on the channel, Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, your childhood gang, like you've never seen them before. Our favorite slackers have just solved a mystery, and their reward is getting thrown in jail by Sheriff Bronson Stone, a man with the intelligence of a doorknob who makes a point of calling everyone's parents to give them a lecture. While the others complain about being underappreciated, Velma spends her time destroying her own parents' pyramid scheme at the town museum, revealing to idiotic tourists that all the ghosts were just criminals in costumes. Meanwhile, the rest of the gang deals with their daddy issues. The mayor wants Fred to be normal, the Stoner's parents want him to find human friends, and Daphne's parents can't stand seeing their daughter drooling over a guy who gets turned on by traps. Deep in the sewers, 3 incompetent workers open a radioactive barrel and take a bath in green goo before turning into slime cocoons. On the way to school, Velma tries to force her affection onto Shaggy, but the skinny guy is quaking in his boots. Terrified the dog will find out about their secret affair, but before he has to choose between the girl and the mutt, a manhole explodes and a slime mutant attacks their van. While investigating the monster's cave, Daphne finds a locket, and Fred, in a rare moment of pure criminality, decides to simply steal one of the mummified bodies left by the monster and take it to a high school professor for analysis. After a quick visit to Fruitmere's dessert shop, where Shaggy continues to avoid Velma like the plague, the professor is also turned into a slime cocoon. At the local radio station's hideout, Velma shows a sample of the monster's muck, and to the disgust of any normal human being, the dog and the beanpole start gulping down the sticky goo straight from the jar. Fortunately, they realize the milky, sweet texture is actually Fruitmere's dessert. Using the perfect excuse to cross-dress, Shaggy and Scooby infiltrate the restaurant as waitresses and end up getting chased by the mutant into a cave. Fred tries to use one of his useless gadgets and ends up trapping the gang in a slime-covered cage, forcing them to eat their way to freedom before drowning the monster in dessert. Ripping off the mask, they reveal the monster was the professor himself trying to rob the bank. And to cap off the day, a mysterious guy named Mr. E calls, warning them that they are cursed for stealing the locket. A family completely disillusioned with reality decides to take a trip to a ghost town called Gatorsburg and ends up getting attacked by a giant bipedal alligator. Meanwhile, the blonde leader of our slacker group spends his free time torturing innocent delivery guys with traps on his front porch. The monotony breaks when a certain Mr. E sends a bag supposedly made of 100% reptile leather, sending the teenagers speeding straight to the abandoned town looking for trouble. Upon arriving in this hole in the middle of nowhere, Fred isolates himself with Daphne, giving Velma the perfect chance to try and devour the skinny guy, but he's still shaking with fear of hurting his mutt's feelings. After finding absolutely nothing useful, they head back to the van, only to discover some local mechanic has stolen the car's entire engine. Since all the parents in this town are negligent and refuse to pick them up, the gang is forced to spend the night at a creepy old lady's hotel who lays down strict rules about boys and girls sleeping separately. Obviously, Velma ignores this in 5 seconds to go chase male attention. While the dog is attacked by 3 alligator men and runs to Fred's room, who is too busy forcing Daphne to look at his trap scrapbook like a nerdy sociopath, Velma finally manages to get close to Shaggy's mouth. Unfortunately, the entire gang busts the door down, ruining the mood, followed closely by the crawling monsters. During their desperate escape, Velma gets pulled through the wooden floor, but Shaggy, in a rare moment of courage, rips off the monster's glove, proving it's just another frustrated human. After pushing the van out of town like idiots, they sneak back in and catch the alligators loading boxes onto a boat. Thanks to Daphne's rich girl allergy to knockoff products, they realize the leather is plastic. Fred uses one of his fetish gizmos to capture the entire redneck family, who reveal they invented the monsters just to sell fake bags in peace. The incompetent sheriff shows up out of nowhere, furious because he bought a fake tracksuit that doesn't let his armpits breathe, and arrests everyone. With the engine recovered and another dark note from Mr. E warning that this is just the beginning, Shaggy finally gathers the courage to hold Velma's hand while the dog is busy peeing himself in fear of the thunder. The peaceful night is completely obliterated when a driverless phantom truck decides to play bumper cars with a traffic cop, knocking the poor guy straight off a cliff into the ocean. Meanwhile, the group of teenagers is doing unpaid slave labor for Fred's dad's re-election campaign, fighting against rival candidate George Avocados, the son of a convicted diamond thief. The useless dog manages to pull off the feat of blowing up the copy machine and covering Avocados from head to toe in black ink, ensuring the political climate gets even worse. On the road back, the gigantic phantom truck tries to crush the teens' van and throw them into the abyss, but Fred manages to tame the steering wheel and save their own skins. When the local sheriff arrives to investigate an obvious case of attempted multiple homicide, he genially concludes that a killer vehicle loose on the streets is a great tourist attraction. To make public safety even worse, all the doorknobs in town start mysteriously disappearing, a field day for the political opposition. Ignoring the chaos, Daphne decides to waste her time on a date at a fancy restaurant with the heir to a ladder empire, a spoiled playboy who forgets his wallet and makes the girl pay the bill. To Daphne's utter humiliation, Fred doesn't feel an ounce of jealousy over this pathetic situation and even compliments his rival's ascot. The clown show is interrupted when Mr. E sends another one of his cryptic messages, this time with a warning about doors and diamonds. Convinced to play God again, Fred sets up a colossal booby trap at City Hall. The gang heads to the cliffs to hunt down the rival candidate, but ends up bumping into the phantom truck and finding a secret cave bizarrely packed with all the stolen doorknobs in town and the old diamond thief's diary. After being chased to the center of town, they lure the truck into City Hall, where the dog triggers the trap and a giant mechanical spatula slams the killer vehicle face first into the ground. The monster is unmasked as the latter playboy, who was stealing metal all over town to try and find the lost diamond and save his bankrupt company, since amazingly, no one buys new ladders every day. With the competition humiliated, Fred's dad maintains his absolute power over the town. Dylan and Brenda are setting up a beach volleyball court for a soulless corporate tournament, but before they can finish arguing, a giant crab swallows Brenda beneath the sand. Dylan thinks she's just being dramatic until the monster pops up again and kidnaps him too, proving that karma is immediate. The next day, the useless gang arrives at the tournament. Velma assumes her role as a fitness dictator and forbids Shaggy from eating junk food, forcing the poor guy to reject a clam cone from a noseless captain who cries about how the city hall ruined his life. Meanwhile, Daphne tries to flirt with Fred, but his smooth brain can only focus on how the volleyball net would make a perfect trap. Suddenly, the man crab erupts from the sand, popping the ball and terrorizing the extras. Instead of running away, Fred has the brilliant idea of using Daphne as live bait. Velma goes to fetch Daphne and finds her in a bikini, begging to be slathered in tanning oil because Fred likes shiny things. But while they argue about male mind control, the crab attacks from behind, drenches Daphne in the slippery oil, and drags her into the sandy sinkhole. To make matters worse, Shaggy loses the war against gluttony, tries to steal food, and triggers Fred's trap prematurely, trapping himself in a giant pot. With Daphne kidnapped, Fred loses the rest of his sanity and spends the entire night digging the ground frantically like a rabid dog. Mr. E sends a letter about 4 teenagers missing in the local caves, so the idiots go investigate. Fred keeps hallucinating until he hears Daphne's voice echoing in the dark, making him vomit intense declarations of love until he finds her and other victims in a cage. The monster appears, and after a pathetic chase up the stairs, Shaggy and Scooby trigger the trap on the beach. Fred tries to unmask the monster, thinking it's the noseless captain, but Velma pulls out the Juice Brand's mascot from inside the suit. The guy spent hours building a robotic crustacean and digging tunnels just because they stole the copyright for his drink's name. In the end, Daphne realizes her locket matches the picture of the missing kids, while Fred swears he will never have feelings again in his life.
Don't worry, I will never have feelings again.
We'll see.
Daphne is babysitting when a sinister flute melody turns the brat she was watching into a rabid demon who kicks her out of the house. The next morning, Velma decides she's going to micromanage every aspect of Shaggy's life, punishing him with a rubber band every time he uses slang and stuffing the poor guy into pants so tight they cut off the circulation to his legs. While the neighborhood is quarantined because all the kids have turned into creepy freaks, Fred reveals he's failing civics and gets a new tutor, an insufferable child prodigy named Mary Ann. The gang discovers through the new exchange teacher, Mr. Portillo, that the threat is K. Horrifico. Velma immediately accuses the teacher of being the creature, forcing the exhausted man to chain himself to a chair to prove his innocence while suffering from indigestion. With the teacher ruled out and Crystal Cove being overrun by a horde of demonic children, the group decides to rent an empty house and disguise Shaggy and Scooby as toddlers, a tactic that obviously fools no one. K. Horrifico invades the house leading his child army, cornering the idiots in the living room. But Fred's tiny brain accidentally steps on the remote control and turns the TV to the broccoli head cartoon. Instantly, the kids take off their scary masks, revealing they were just bored, normal brats who wanted to watch television. Fred catches the monster in the usual trap, and the mask reveals none other than the mini-tutor, Mary Ann. The pint-sized psychopath confesses she wanted to turn the town into her own dictatorial utopia, and to get rid of the adults, she bribed kids with candy to pretend to be hypnotized by the flute. The sheriff arrests the little girl without remorse, and at K. Ghoul, Shaggy finally reclaims his dignity, tossing Velma's torturous pants aside to return to his baggy rags. A generic teenager is taking his date to the prom, but in the middle of his cheap flirting, she rips her own face off, revealing herself to be a horrendous ghost girl, and kidnaps the boy in the limo. Meanwhile, Velma plots to force Shaggy to go public with their relationship at the dance, demanding he abandon Scooby to an abyss of loneliness. At school, Daphne tries to beg for Fred's attention, but the doorknob IQ leader prefers to drool over the new student, Alice May. Consumed by jealousy and rejection, Daphne goes to investigate the mystery of the missing kids in the library, where she is almost crushed by a bookshelf before seeing Alice acting bizarrely in the locker room. The next day, the gang decides to investigate the new girl's house, but the address leads straight to the local cemetery. Shaggy drops a clumsy line about the prom, and Velma reacts by kicking tombstones like a rabid vandal. The ghost girl appears to hunt the intruders, forcing the group to hide in the mausoleum of a former criminal villain. There, they find costume pieces and obvious clues, but Fred remains in denial and announces he's taking Alice to the prom anyway. The big night arrives, and Daphne, acting like a possessive maniac, attacks Fred on his doorstep, making Alice's limo speed away while she swears revenge. Shaggy lies to the dog about going to buy sardines and puts on a tuxedo in the bushes so he can sneak into the limo with Velma. Scooby sees the car and thinks his skinny owner has been abducted. At the gym, the monster attacks, but Fred uses himself as human bait and captures the entity in the middle of the court. The ghost is revealed to be Alice, who claims to be the daughter of an old criminal looking for revenge. But the real prize is in the backpack she left behind, an old yearbook that reveals the identity of the missing teens as the original Mystery Incorporated team. But nothing is what it seems. Later, Alice is bailed out of jail by a suited henchman working for Mr. E. She confesses that this whole ridiculous performance of ghosts and fake kidnappings was just a paid job. The sole purpose of this massive, stupid operation was to make the gang of goofballs find the damn yearbook and follow the trail of the past. Every questionable teen's favorite goth girls are putting on a show, but Scooby is furious with Shaggy for trading their horror movie marathon for frantic makeout sessions with Velma. On stage, a futuristic ghost, straight out of a cheap Daft Punk cosplay, attacks the band and drops a colossal amplifier right on lead singer Thorne's head. With the leader out of commission, the crew wants to cancel the entire tour, but Fred decides the show must go on, leaving Velma hysterically begging to be the replacement. Fred, being the expert at ignoring signs that he is, chooses Daphne, who sings wonderfully, but quickly realizes she's just juicy live bait for the monster. To ensure the safety of his love interest, our square-jawed leader builds one of his contraptions on the ceiling, but when the ghost reappears, the trap crashes down on the other band members, and Daphne is supposedly kidnapped, causing Fred Fred to have an emotional breakdown identical to a toddler who dropped his ice cream on the pavement. The town's useless sheriff would rather focus on buying band t-shirts than investigating the crime, so the team has to roll up their sleeves themselves. Meanwhile, Scooby decides a wooden ventriloquist dummy named Harry makes for better company than Shaggy, proving the group's sky-high maturity level. Fred discovers his trap was sabotaged with slippery lotion, and while trying to process his feelings out loud, he accidentally says he wishes he didn't care about Daphne, right as she drops from the ceiling and hears the worst part of the monologue. Furious, she embraces her new emo phase, becomes the star of the band under the name Crush, and kicks Fred out of the venue, but the piece of wood steals the show when its severed head escapes a burning bus with a piece of the ghost's holographic cape stuck in its mouth. The team discovers the shiny fabric belongs to a washed-up former pop singer and plans an ambush at the next show. Daphne debuts with an anthem humiliating Fred in front of thousands of people, while the ghost tries to grab her on stage, only to take the bait, hug the wooden dummy, and fall straight into a giant net. The villain is revealed to be the band's rejected former manager. Fred finally admits his feelings, swallowing his pride, and is forgiven by the redhead, while Scooby forgives Shaggy as Velma watches everything from afar with palpable envy and loneliness. A bunch of grown-up nerds dressed in medieval garb have their peaceful event invaded by an acrobatic mutant gnome who attacks anyone dressed as a pirate, leaving the victims paralyzed and blue as if they had swallowed a spoiled Smurf. While Shaggy and Scooby wander the event dressed as buccaneers and thinking only about stuffing food down their throats, Velma freaks out because her secret boyfriend refuses to take off his idiotic costume. As the attacks escalate, the sheriff and the mayor make it clear they are more useless than a traffic light on a desert island, seeing the tragedy of paralyzed citizens solely as a golden opportunity to profit off idiotic tourists just like you. The team springs into investigative action, and Velma's mother tries to help by offering to poison Shaggy as a new form of couples therapy. The insanity level rises drastically when Fred inspects one of the victims in the hospital and simply extracts a glowing fluid sample by drilling into the poor guy's skin with a hole saw. Velma discovers the fluid is a jellyfish toxin, but the investigation takes an aggressive hit when Shaggy gets a concussion against a tree and vanishes into the glowing clutches of the gnome. Desperate, and without her snack-eating boyfriend, Velma swallows her pride and makes peace with the talking dog, immediately receiving another cryptic and disturbing tip from Mr. E on the phone. They discover a network of hidden wooden walkways in the trees, and prepare a dirt grave on the forest floor to bury the problem once and for all. Scooby serves as juicy bait, and Daphne pops out of nowhere sporting pure steel bracelets to block the villain's toxic hands. The gnome ends up tripping over his own feet and falling into the hole, being unmasked as the festival's jester. He tried to frame his own rich wife, but Velma exposes that the guy has pathetically short legs and wore stilts under his clothes to look tall. The sheriff takes the comedic cue to humiliate the criminal.
Yeah, Shrimpo, we got the picture. Ow! Let's go, little footy.
Amidst the brightly lit celebration, Velma bumps into an executioner who drops a box sent by Mr. E, revealing a sinister photo of the old Mystery Inc. lineup with a creepy bird circled in red. The town of Crystal Cove suffers another infrastructural collapse when a giant green monster decides a local restaurant doesn't match the urban decor and turns everything into dust and rubble. But the real radioactive freak show happens in Shaggy's backyard when Scooby catches his best friend rubbing tonsils with Velma right in the middle of the garden. The dog's heart is shattered. Velma is furious at the boy's hesitation to go public with the relationship, and the sickest love triangle in history reaches its absolute peak. To make the mass destruction worse, a second red monster appears crushing buildings, and Fred decides the best way to focus the team is to force everyone to wear ridiculous corporate uniforms and officially name the group Mystery Incorporated. After nearly turning into barbecue when a crane hurls a gas tank right at their faces on a construction site, Mr. E makes contact through the car radio, dropping philosophical riddles about insurance and signs. The mayor and the sheriff, maintaining the city's stratospheric level of incompetence, decide to rent an entire stadium to capture the beasts using the police force and zero brains. But Velma, using her hacker nerd glasses, cross-references the absurd data of the attacks online and figures out the armored creature's exact next target. The square-jawed leader sets up a trap in an abandoned boat repair warehouse full of dirty water. The two gigantic gorillas show up growling, destroying the walls, but instead of attacking the meddling teens, they start throwing colossally heavy punches at each other like two drunks in a bar fight. Fred seizes the distraction, drops a wet, electrified net on top of them, and is absolutely shocked that his own invention didn't fail miserably for the first time in his life. Velma rips off the drool-covered masks and reveals the Minner brothers, owners of rival insurance companies and former circus apes who spent their days destroying the buildings the other brother insured, purely out of envy, greed, and fragile masculinity. The authorities haul the two brutes to the squad car, while they continue brutally slapping each other, and the team proudly tosses Fred's tacky uniforms in the trash. But the group's peace lasts exactly 2 seconds because Velma and Scooby corner Shaggy in the street, demanding he permanently choose who is going to receive his love, making the coward scream that he's seeing a non-existent blue monster, just so he can run as fast as possible and escape his own responsibilities. An animal sanctuary goes into total lockdown after being attacked by a demonic dog. And meanwhile, the useless gang is at school meeting Jason Wyatt. This psycho is a thirsty robotics nerd who wants to get laid with Velma at all costs, but she mercilessly rejects him, preferring to keep her distance from losers. That same night, a tour bus is shredded by the same hound from hell. The team finds the crime scene upside down, and Sheriff Stone, proving he has the IQ of a doorknob, accuses Scooby of the attack and throws the dog in jail. When the unemployed teens go visit their friend in the maximum security prison for psychopathic animals, they find a parrot locked in a cell worthy of Hannibal Lecter. The bird's name is Professor Pericles, a member of the original Mystery Inc., who drops a sinister warning for Fred to beware of those closest to him. Back at the crime scene, the gang finds a robotic leg, proving the monster is just a giant toy. Obviously, they accuse the virgin Jason of trying to frame Scooby just to get Velma alone. They break into the kid's house, but he denies it, crying like a giant baby. On the way back, the robot dog attacks again, but Sheriff Stone continues to couldn't care less about Scooby's innocence. Suddenly, a new attack happens at the sanctuary, and the monster chases the gang to a robotics factory. After nearly being turned into pate, they have the brilliant idea of using the machinery to crush the bucket of bolts. Scooby drives a tractor and runs the damn thing over, while Fred uses the factory claws to catch the pilot. To the shock of 0 people, it was Jason's mom. The old lady was so furious about the bullying her son suffered that she decided to destroy Scooby's life to get the boy a girlfriend. With his mom locked up, Jason finally accepts being in the friend zone, but the victory is short-lived because Shaggy decides to break up with Velma to keep cuddling with Scooby, leaving the nerd in tears for being dumped for a gluttonous mutt. To make matters worse, the sheriff discovers the parrot escaped from the asylum, and Mr. E sends a cryptic message telling them to follow the bird.
Mr. E, what's it say? It says, follow the parrot.
A boring-as-hell charity art auction turns into chaos when a vampire attacks and steals a painting. The gang tries to investigate the scene, but the vibe is absolute radioactive trash because Velma and Shaggy are still giving each other the cold shoulder after their breakup. Trying to prevent an actual murder within the group, Daphne splits everyone into 2 teams. Fred, Shaggy, and Scooby try to guess where the vampire is going to suck blood and end up at a blood bank, but they hear a scream and bolt to a botanical garden. Meanwhile, Daphne and Velma are chilling at a spa and start getting suspicious of Daphne's own mom, who is sneaking around like a total criminal. They follow the woman's trail and bump into the guys at the exact same garden. The monster shows up, scares the crap out of them, and bails, stealing some bizarre star orchid. Looking for answers, the team goes snooping around the town's haunted museum. Out of nowhere, a book flies off the shelf right into Daphne's face. Inside, they find a recipe for an eternal youth serum that coincidentally requires the painting and the flower. Even though it's obviously a satire, they realize the idiot vampire is following the recipe to the letter. They head to the only restaurant in town that carries the next ingredient, a perfectly aged wine. In the wine cellar, Fred suggests they split up, but Velma throws a massive fit and refuses to go into dark holes with Shaggy. Fred tries to play couples therapist, but the vampire uses the clown show as a distraction to steal the dusty bottle and bolt. Since Daphne's mom was there, they now suspect she's the culprit trying to drink the youth juice. The final target is a devil's eye ruby at the Museum of Oddities. They set a trap, the monster appears, steals the jewel, and doesn't even notice that Velma swapped it for a fake rock. Fred's first contraption fails miserably, but Scooby triggers the backup and traps the creature. Daphne gets ready to drive a stake through the vampire's heart, making her crap her pants in fear and confess she's a fake. The bloodsucker was Sheila, who envied Daphne's mom's smooth, creamy skin. She faked being a bat using acrobatics just to prep the face facial concoction. Daphne's mom shows up and reveals she was only sneaking out at night to take a notary public course. The woman goes to jail, the gang's vibe remains depressing, and one of Mr. E's henchmen is watching them from afar like a total maniac. At the university diner, a pretentious fanboy mocks some nerds reading a book by an author named H.P. Hatecraft, but karma acts fast, and he gets attacked by the very tentacle creature from the story. Meanwhile, the gang is at peak teenage depression. Their parents dump them at the college campus, and they split up without saying a word, since Shaggy chose to pet the dog instead of Velma. Fred tries to fit in at a fraternity where sweaty bros love grappling on the floor. Daphne goes to a useless protest center, and the starving duo goes to grab some burgers, only to discover the absolute tragedy that the place is now completely vegan. Velma attends a lecture where an annoying student named Howard defends Hatecraft's tentacle stories. That night, the guest speaker is attacked by the creature in the parking lot. The scream makes all the slacker teens run to the scene where they find a book reeking of spoiled clam chowder. They go pester the writer, who is scared to death thinking his monsters have crossed over into the real world, but Velma notices the fan mail has the exact same handwriting. Fred tries to bring the group back together, but everyone turns their backs and walks away. Shaggy and Scooby find a depressed Velma at the vegan diner, while Fred is literally being dunked into pudding by his new meathead bros. The tentacle monster decides to crash the restaurant, forcing Shaggy to grab Velma to escape. Fred uses the chaos to scoop Daphne up in the middle of a pathetic musical strike, and they all bump into the writer, who confesses to the students that he's a total fraud. Howard refuses to accept the truth, and before the extras can finish singing, the giant squid shows up and kidnaps the author. At Hatecraft's house, the gang scavenges for junk to build a trap. Shaggy thinks he's being hunted by a tentacle, but it's just the strap of a backpack full of bizarre stories and rotting fish stench. Fred kicks down a door and frees the idiot from the first scene, who was locked in there so he wouldn't spill the beans. On the roof, the monster is about to drop the writer to his death. The girls start chanting to distract the freak while Shaggy and Scooby attack. The creature falls, and Fred muffles its sonic scream by shoving his own ascot into its blowhole. The mask comes off, revealing Howard, the obsessed fan, who was using real octopus legs to give off that sweaty cod smell. With the fanatic locked up, the group heads back to the van, only to find a mysterious box from the Darrow family archives left as a gift by the damn Mr. E. A lunatic named Kelsepsian is heading home from his gig at the town's most radioactive company when he gets a threatening phone call. Like any extra with a negative IQ, he ignores it and almost gets thrown off a cliff by a giant swarm of mutant cicadas. The next day, our gang of slackers is watching a lecture by Dr. Yance about bugs. The guy is so charming that Daphne almost slips off her chair, especially since Fred only ever talks about how he wants to shove everyone into his traps. Yance throws a tantrum because Shaggy and Scooby are eating Destroido bars, funding pollution, and amidst the culinary panic, Shaggy chokes on a letter from Mr. E sending them to the hospital. There, Fred tries to ask Daphne out, but gets the most epic rejection in history when he reveals the date would be at the wonderful Trap Expo 3000. They find the extra from the attack being scrubbed clean of the bugs stuck to his body, but Fred's dad forbids the gang from investigating because he wants to use the monster to cash in on a cicada festival, exactly like a real politician. Soon after, they find another hospital worker being buttered up by Grandma Moonbeam, the creator of Shaggy's favorite snack bar. The guy has a heart attack screaming about bugs. The gang gets into an elevator and ends up in the basement, coming face to face with the cicada monster, who tells them to stop snooping. Bitten by jealousy over Daphne, Fred decides Dr. Yance is the monster and breaks into the school, finding the professor playing the harp to a bunch of bugs. Fred accuses him of stealing his girl, making Daphne melt, and the cops arrive just for the mayor to confirm he wants the monster roaming free to attract tourists. At the festival, Daphne finally accepts Fred's bizarre date. The gang follows Professor Yance into a low-budget haunted house, but they end up trapped with the monster. Using brute force and zero brain power, Fred smashes through the walls, luring the creature into the parking lot where the mystery machine has been rigged into a giant vacuum cleaner. Scooby sucks the creature up whole, revealing Grandma Moonbeam. She snapped because Destroido started stuffing landfill garbage into her all-natural recipe, so she used sound waves to control cicadas potatoes and get her revenge. With the old lady in jail, Fred and Daphne go on their date to the Trap Expo, end up locked in the building all night, and Daphne finally enjoys the romantic imprisonment. Scooby catches a pathetic fever and ruins the gang's plans to go to the Mystery Solvers Club state finals. With a bruised ego after Velma called him a mere sidekick, the dog passes out and enters a fever dream. In the dream, he wakes up cured, runs to the tournament, and meets the rest of the petting zoo of forgotten 70s mascots: Jabberjaw, the Funky Phantom, Speed Buggy, and Captain Caveman. But before the party kicks off, a flaming skeleton named Lord Infernicus shows up, kidnaps all the humans, and gives them until midnight to find the missing teens. While the support crew goes to fix the comms antenna, Scooby sniffs the floor like an addict and leads the mascots to the science lab, where he discovers the teenagers have been turned into guinea pigs. He tries to seduce Shaggy's rodent with a Scooby snack, gets slapped in the face, and realizes that's not his owner. The Funky Phantom throws a diva fit, says he doesn't need anyone, grabs the rodents, and flees to the library. After the villain destroys the entire hallway, Scooby finds a flyer for the docks in the trash and everyone bolts there. When a ship tries to escape, Jabberjaw and Captain Caveman simply sink the vessel out of pure hatred, forcing Infernicus to head back to land in a giant semi-truck with the teens locked inside shipping containers. Speed Buggy throws himself in front of the truck, Scooby and the crew throw the guinea pigs at the windshield to blind the driver, and the villain is finally stopped. Scooby rips off the skeleton's mask and reveals the Funky Phantom. The freeloading bedsheet was tired of being treated like garbage, so he planned to swap the kids for hamsters and ship everyone off to Africa just to take over as the leader. His phantom cat rebels and claws its owner's face, but before Scooby can celebrate, he wakes up from his fever coma. The gang reveals they beg to postpone the competition and assure him he's a valued member, but when the tournament president walks into the room, the dog freaks out upon seeing the guy is a spitting image of the Phantom from his dream. At a roadside bar, a biker gang leader is trying his luck with a woman when some green-skinned freak tells him to get lost. This is Oddnarb, leader of the Wild Brood, who decides to take his buff orcs for a vacation in Crystal Cove. Meanwhile, Fred takes Daphne on the worst date in history to his dad's diner just to mooch off the free refills, and even drags Shaggy, Scooby, and Velma along to ruin the romance. The gang of orcs crashes the place. The sheriff tries to kick the monsters out, but Oddnarb drops some cheap poetry saying the real monsters are the citizens. Daphne gets totally wet over the intellectual talk, turns her back on Fred's apathy, and heads to the beach with Velma and the bikers. On the sand, Oddnarb plays acoustic guitar for Daphne, while Velma tunes up a motorcycle engine, complaining that useless Shaggy keeps clicking on sketchy ads and filling the computer with viruses. Later, a biker breaks into the town armory, steals a rocket launcher, and drops a piece of paper. The next morning, the sheriff busts into Daphne's room blaming the orcs, but Velma checks the security footage and realizes the footprints lead straight to a cybercafe napkin. At the internet cafe, Mr. E sends an image of a dancing swordfish on the screen. Velma uses the clue to hack the system, but is immediately kidnapped by a shadow orc. The villain ties Scooby to a cliff and threatens to drop the dog if Velma doesn't hack and reroute a train. Despite having the chance to eliminate her furry rival for Shaggy's affection, Velma hacks the government system and changes the route. The orc pushes Velma, but she bounces off a branch with the dog and survives the absurdity. Back at the police station, the gang discovers the Wild Brood is just a bunch of nerd programmers cosplaying to escape their miserable lives, and that Swordfish is a new video game being transported on the train. Everyone jumps onto the moving train. The shadow orc blows up the bridge with the rocket launcher, but they uncouple the train cars right before tragedy strikes. The villain is revealed to be Maxwell, the loser from the copy room who snapped because they didn't let him participate in the game's beta test. Daphne finally chooses to stick with Fred. The green nerds leave, and the town returns to its chaotic normal. A bunch of hormonal teens at a football game get interrupted by a hideous goddess of love named Aphrodite, who decides the best way to cause chaos is to blast sketchy flowers into everyone's faces. The magic dust makes the students fall in love with literally any piece of trash in town until they lose the few brain cells they had left.
Yeah, I get it. Well, what if I just...
You are so amazing. I love everything.
The next day, our slacker gang notices the bizarre sexual tension in the hallways, but Shaggy only cares about ditching a test when he sees a substitute teacher. Unfortunately for him, the sub is that busted-ass Aphrodite herself, who blows a handful of her magic pollen right in his face, filling the boy with that uncontrollable love. Soon, the entire Mystery Inc. is infected, rubbing their frustrations together and running back to their pathetic romances. Meanwhile, Scooby wanders around looking for his useless owner and discovers he's completely immune to the hag's flowers. Furious that she can't seduce the dog, Aphrodite commands her army of love simps to capture him. Scooby flees into an alley and bumps into none other than the psychopathic parrot, Professor Pericles, who conveniently decides to help. They go around looting churches and mines for bizarre ingredients like rose quartz and ectoplasm to brew a curative green sludge. As the two are mixing the fluids at the school, Aphrodite kicks down the door with her simps, but the bird and the dog escape and spray the green juice all over the gang, killing everyone's mood. Angel Dynamite shows up with her chronic stuffy nose and rescues the kids in her van. At the library, they figure out the villain's dress is a prom gown and trace it back to Amanda Smythe, a heavily bullied nerd. Disguised as lovesick zombies, the gang crashes the town's bizarre prom, splashes the green sludge in everyone's faces, and Fred drops a classic trap on the goddess. Amanda is unmasked, revealing she got hot and just wanted to destroy the town that humiliated her. But the real slap in the face comes when one of Mr. E's henchmen plays an audio clip of Pericles confessing he orchestrated this entire love orgy just to distract the town while he stole the Darrow family archives and a diamond drill, planning to unearth a cursed treasure that will wipe Crystal Cove off the map for good. Decades ago on Halloween, the entire Darrow family was fighting over a golden pizza slice when their house decided to get swallowed by the earth. In the present, our gang of slackers receives Cassidy Williams's diary, thanks to the bizarre Mr. E, and discovers the old mansion was located exactly where the university is today. They climb down a smokestack in the boiler room and drop right into the damn buried mansion, only for the fireplace to shut its back doors and trap them inside. A voice on the radio welcomes them, thinking they are the original Mystery Inc. Useless Shaggy immediately steps where he shouldn't and triggers a spike pit. Trying to play the hero, Fred messes with a painting and unleashes chainsaws and a giant net, forcing the gang to run from falling swords and anvils until they drop like garbage into a dark pit. Fred and Daphne wake up tied up in a pool filling with water, with the voice thinking they are Brad and Judy in a deadly little romantic game of love. With nothing but an egg beater, a hammer, a screwdriver, and a rock, Fred manages to penetrate the system and free them both, leaving Daphne disappointed that they didn't get to do mouth-to-mouth. In another room, Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby are trapped in a maze of tripwires and blades. Velma uses her eyebrow trimmer to cut the tension of the main wire, while Scooby, guided by the smell of food, steps his paws onto gray tiles that deactivate the flying knives. The gang regroups in the kitchen and bumps into Danny Darrow, a decrepit old man who tries to attack everyone but gets shoved aside like a rag doll. Fred blocks the door with a cabinet and the blessed golden pizza slice mysteriously drops. The old geezer smashes through everything wanting his toy, but ends up falling into Fred's trap when Scooby dresses up as his mother and fools the schizophrenic senior, throwing the poor guy straight into a piano. Danny confesses he realized they aren't the original group because the parrot is missing. He spent his entire life building traps waiting for their return, while his own family died over that piece. But suddenly, the whole house starts to collapse because the teens destroyed the foundations. The old man gets trapped on the other side, tells them to keep the treasure, and the gang escapes to the surface, while Mayor Jones watches everything from hiding with the face of a man who knows exactly how deep the rabbit hole goes.
No! Through that crevice before it's too late! Who else is looking for him?
In Macau, a mysterious Asian woman named Mai Li pulls a scam at a pawn shop and blatantly steals a dragon ring, leaving a man shooting white lightning from his hands out of pure rage. In Crystal Cove, Velma introduces the thief to the gang disguised as an exchange student. The girl immediately wants to devour Shaggy, while the cafe owner Chen pushes pork-flavored ice cream sandwiches on them and keeps a very close eye on the girl's ring. Daphne blurts out that her rich parents are hosting a dinner for a Chinese Chinese diplomat, Mr. Wang, and everyone is invited. At the dinner, Shaggy swaps seats with his own dog just to rub up against Mai Li. Out of nowhere, the lights go out and a red wizard pops up shooting devil red lightning, warning everyone not to touch the dragon's heart. Fred tries to play alpha male by triggering a trap he hid in the house without permission, fails miserably, and leaves Daphne's parents foaming with rage. Later, Fred is spying through the van's periscope when Daphne accidentally sits on the button and gets ejected through the roof of the car. Shaggy keeps stuffing Mai Li with ice cream, leaving Scooby and Velma crying in the corners for not getting any attention. Suddenly, the white wizard drops from the sky, laughing like a lunatic. The red wizard shows up to fight midair, gets his ass kicked, and the white one kidnaps Mai Li. The gang chases the kidnapper using the ejector seat to fire Shaggy's bag of cookies like an anti-aircraft missile, forcing the wizard to drop his prey. But the peace doesn't last. At Velma's house, the white wizard breaks into the living room. Shaggy trips while reading a Chinese dictionary, and the villain manages to steal Mai Li's ring. At the cafe, Chen confesses he is the red wizard and guardian of the dragon's heart ruby, which only opens by shoving all 4 rings in at the same time. At night, the gang sets a snare, douses the white wizard in water, and traps him inside a giant paper lantern. He is unmasked as the diplomat Wang, who was using jetpacks and Tesla coils to cosplay as a badass sorcerer. Mai Li returns the rings and heads back to China, leaving Shaggy heartbroken. But since a teenager doesn't give up easily, he chases the girl to the docks and discovers the girl actually swiped the real ruby and was fleeing on a boat. Panicking, she tosses the rock right into his hands and falls perfectly into a trap Fred rigged on his own family's boat. Shaggy and Scooby are rotting on the couch watching a zombie movie when the doorbell rings, and Vincent Van Gogh himself pops up at the door. The useless duo takes half an hour to process that he isn't a walking corpse, but the actual actor, announcing they won an essay contest where the only other participant was a damn Eskimo. Vincent shoves them both into a hearse and drags them to his absurdly rich mansion, locking everyone inside the second he plays a little tune on a piano. During dinner, movie monsters start spawning from the shadows, but when the duo tries to run, a metal barrier ruins the fun. Out of nowhere, a freak called Night Fright appears and beats the crap out of all the phony monsters. Vincent panics and confesses the other creatures were just actors to scare the 2 dopes, but this new beast is an actual threat. While the trio is locked in the library crying for help to a hidden camera, Velma gets a call from the show's production crew. She warns Fred, who was busy ignoring Daphne's aggressive hunger at a fancy restaurant, while the girl fumed with rage over not being allowed to swallow anything. The entire gang penetrates the mansion through the back by using 2 thick underground pipes to enter the house. As soon as they breach the premises, the monster trips down the stairs like a complete imbecile and vanishes. Hiding in a bedroom, Daphne digs through some abandoned scripts and discovers the creature's exact lines. Fred, with his peanut brain shining, comes up with a perfect trap. Vincent, Shaggy, and Scooby act as live bait walking the halls, and when Night Fright tries to attack, Vincent pretends to be the alpha male and treats the monster like harmless garbage. They lure the beast into the bedroom, capture the bastard, and rip off the mask, revealing Argus Fentonpoof.
Perfect.
The production assistant?
A crybaby screenwriter seeking revenge because Vincent improved his trashy script. The executive producer loves the freak show and invites the gang to star in a TV program, but they decline and let out a sadistic laugh worthy of villains. A bunch of fish freaks attack Captain Shelton's brother while he was fishing at a place literally called Dead Man's Point. Meanwhile, Fred and Daphne flirt at a creepy museum, recalling that they made a blood pact to never speak of Scooby's cursed nephew again. Across town, the vampire waitress cuts off Shaggy and Scooby's food supply, but Shaggy reveals they are experts at the technique of swallowing everything without breathing, aggressively sucking whole plates down their throats. Velma, bitter and friendless, updates her useless blog until she gets an email about haunted oil rigs and missing boats. Since everyone ignores her, she steals Daphne's dad's expensive boat, meets a mermaid named Amy, and survives an attack by mutant fish. The next day, the gang goes to interrogate Ed Machine at Destroido, who is too busy advertising pork-flavored gummies to the masses. They bump into an annoying college activist named Ernesto protesting for the environment before taking the boat to storm the rig. Obviously, they get cornered by the giant fish and tied up in a corner alongside Dr. Spike Kavanaugh and the Shelton brothers. The monsters want to drill into the ocean floor and cause a catastrophic oil spill, but Amy pops out of nowhere and unties everyone. Taking advantage of their absurd breath-holding skills, Shaggy and Scooby dive deep down to shut off the drill, luring the wet fish straight into one of Fred's Fred's traps. The monsters are unmasked as Ernesto and his hypocritical activists, who plan to destroy the planet just to fund their own environmental protests. To make Velma's humiliation even worse, Amy confesses she was never a mermaid, just the doctor's wife who used her blog as bait for suckers. Tired of being played for a fool, Velma corners Angel Dynamite and spits in her face that she knows her true identity is Cassidy Williams, a member of the deceased Mystery Inc. A teenage couple is trying to enjoy a rundown amusement park when a colossal manticore swoops down from the sky to crash their date. Meanwhile, Angel tries to sneak into Destroido but is caught by Ed Machine and demands to speak to Mr. E about the planispheric disk. At City Hall, Mayor Jones, acting like a complete moron, confesses that the monster is his fault for buying a cursed Persian temple from a sketchy website, paying with leftover t-shirts. Fred is thrilled at the chance to lick his dad's boots and drags the gang to the park, where they meet the desperate owner and his weird daughter, Hot Dog Water, who love showing off charts of how miserably they are going bankrupt. The monster attacks the gang at the temple, forcing them all to jump into a roller coaster car to avoid becoming mincemeat. Velma discovers the temple's website was a massive scam run by someone who knows their way around computers. While the rest of the gang investigates, Shaggy and Scooby are kidnapped by the Manticore, tossed into a bouncy castle, and come back speaking in ridiculous, high-pitched voices. Meanwhile, Velma catches Mayor Jones snooping through Fred's drawers like a basement rat looking for secrets. Fred's trap requires covering Shaggy and Scooby with gallons of hot nacho cheese and 9 pounds of dead fish to lure the creature, but the two starving idiots lick themselves clean before the beast even arrives. Velma catches a familiar foul smell just before the Manticore grabs Daphne. The gang hangs onto the roller coaster in a train of despair until Scooby launches himself like a missile and crushes the monster into a fortune teller machine. The creature deflates, revealing itself to be Hot Dog Water, who faked the website and was stealing the park's steel to turn into a bizarre super helium to sell to Australian Zeppelins. While the sewer-smelling girl is arrested, Angel confesses to Mr. E that she planted a bug on poor Velma, ensuring they are watching the gang's every move. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, Dr. Rick Spartan and his wife Marion find a cursed temple, but when she super conveniently breaks her ankle, Spartan decides to ignore his fallen wife and steal a shrunken head from the altar. Immediately, a headless monster with a face on its chest appears to prove the curse warning wasn't a meme. Meanwhile, Fred drives like a sociopath so he won't be late for biology class, only to discover the new teacher is the bald adventurer himself.
But there's 45 minutes left.
Kachinga!
Spartan invites the gang to dinner, and we meet his servant Kachinga, who's actually just a humiliated Oxford alum forced to cosplay as a savage to massage his boss's ego. During dinner, the headless monster invades the house, smashing through walls, but the gang chases the beast away with spears. Since the curse is still active, Velma's mom suggests a talking jackal bury the head in a jungle, so Scooby is demoted to a mystical mutt and buries the item in the city's botanical garden. The problem is, the monster sprouts from the dirt and beats Spartan until he's sent to the hospital. Tired of getting pummeled, the adventurer decides to retire, causing his wife to have multiple spasms of joy. But Fred finds a giant contact lens with a camera and an Oxford ring in the garden. When the useless sheriff arrests poor Kachinga, Spartan realizes the curse is fake and decides to return to the jungle. At that exact moment, the monster destroys the hospital roof and the gang uses Spartan's bed as a getaway cart until Fred triggers a trap. The creature is unmasked as Marion herself, who faked everything, bought the head from a costume shop, and dressed up as a muscular freak just because she hated the jungle and wanted her husband locked at home, exactly like his ex. In the end, Velma decides to crush Shaggy's heart by saying she just wants to be friends, leaving him as empty as the monster's head. The town's useless mayor spends his night screaming down the hallways and sleeping in the yard like a mangy dog because a shadowy figure won't stop haunting his house. Fred, realizing his dad is freaking out, invites Shaggy and Scooby to sleep over and protect the old man. But in the middle of the night, the pizza dough they were making comes alive and tries to swallow the two of them, while the mayor is magically pinned to the ceiling. Frustrated with this paranormal circus, Fred rigs the house with cameras and invites a mystical barista to hold a seance. The Ouija board catches fire out of nowhere, and everyone flees the house, except the mayor, who is mysteriously pulled back into the darkness. However, upon checking the camera footage, the gang discovers the pathetic pathetic truth. The mayor wasn't pulled, he simply walked backward into the house, closed the door, and triggered one of Fred's own traps that had been modified to spit fire. And what gives the mastermind away isn't a genius clue, but a pile of drooled-on sunflower seeds under the bed. Knowing the true culprit needs a giant brain to hack the system, the gang locks down the entire house and redirects the traps. The ghostly shadow tries to float across the hall but ends up pinned to the wall by 2 spears. The figure is unmasked as Professor Pericles, the psychopathic parrot. Velma reveals that this demonic bird used a Trojan horse to hack Fred's laptop, since his password must be something incredibly stupid, took control of the traps, and convinced the mayor the house was haunted. Since Pericles can literally fly, the floating ghost costume was an easy sell. He only did all this to recover the piece of the planispheric disc the mayor had stolen from him in the past. The parrot escapes with the disc, leaving the gang in the basement with the tied-up mayor, proving once again that Fred is only good for getting played like a fool. Sheriff Stone reaches the absolute peak of his incompetence when a ghost named Dead Justice starts arresting all the town's criminals in his place. This undead cowboy humiliates local authorities so badly that the mayor himself snatches the best crime fighter trophy from the sheriff's hands and gives it to the ghost, leaving Stone's partner, Deputy Bucky, devastated without his daily dose of being a jerk. While the gang tries to investigate where this spectral vigilante came from, they get shot at on the road by the ghost. But notice the gun's bullets have cartoon faces, proving the villain has serious mental issues.
Dead.
After interrogating a bodybuilder blogger who destroys his own house with a car out of pure rage, the mayor finally fires the sheriff and puts the ghost to work for free. Stone falls into a deep depression, revealing that his given first name is literally Sheriff, and ends up working at a diner frying clams with a paper bag over his head to hide his shame. Pitying this piece of human trash, the gang decides to set an ambush. Stone dresses up as an old bank robber and lures Dead Justice into an alley where he is finally captured. The supernatural vigilante is revealed to be none other than Deputy Bucky, who faked everything because he was too dumb to pass his promotion exams and wanted to steal his boss's job. He confesses he used CGI to create the animated bullets he fired at the teens, which Velma had already figured out since she's the only one with brain matter in the group. Stone gets his job back. The mayor refuses to give Fred any praise, and the gang leader realizes his dad hates him. But to make up for this paternal rejection, Fred takes Daphne to the fried fish-smelling diner, gets down on one knee, and proposes to her using a greasy onion ring. Daphne desperately swallows the promise of eternal love, agreeing to be the van driver's fiancé for the rest of her life. The meddling kids gather at a rundown radio station where Daphne tries to rub her engagement in everyone's face, but the blonde protagonist with a rope fetish can only focus on a useless app that monitors his beloved traps. Meanwhile, the bespectacled nerd discovers their bizarre disc is in Spanish and backwards, forcing them to drag an old chest to the university to beg for help from the frustrated writer, HP. Hatecraft. Turns out the guy ditched cosmic tentacles to try and cash in by writing third-rate teen romance. But before they can critique his terrible literary taste, a crazy woman dressed in black leather straps looking like a robotic dominatrix blows up their beloved van. She introduces herself as Obliteratrix and throws concussion bombs everywhere, making the group scatter like headless chickens until they crash a rival's reading event and cause a public disaster. While the bizarre rich old Mr. E watches everything on camera while eating popcorn, the blonde leader mourns the supposed death of his car until his phone burps and proves the van is still breathing. They hijack a promotional van, recover the mystery machine, and set off for a train yard brawl against the heavily armed dominatrix. The blonde tries to throw a tarp over the woman, but she vanishes into thin air like magic. Following clues from stained glass windows, the group of slackers breaks into an old Spanish church. The dominatrix returns to corner everyone, but radio host Angel Dynamite comes out of nowhere, beats the crap out of the villain, and rips her mask off, revealing the leather freak is little Alice May. The ghost girl confesses that Mr. E broke her out of jail just to play with explosives and distract the psychopathic parrot. With nowhere left to run, Angel finally spits the truth and admits to being Cassidy Williams, a member of the original team who was run out of town by blackmail. She begs these idiots to drop the bomb before they get killed, but the trap addict puts his foot down and refuses, completely ignoring the fact that a horrifying freak is on the roof reciting cheap villain poetry. The bespectacled nerd decides to play spy and sends a cryptic midnight email, summoning the band of misfits to break into City Hall. The blonde rope fan takes advantage of a moment of vulnerability from his so-called dad to steal the keys to his office, proving trust doesn't exist in this family. Mid-break-in, they find a scroll with a drawing of the disc, but are soon cornered by the freak of Crystal Cove and end up running straight into the arms of the most useless sheriff on the planet, who throws them all in jail. A disastrous parent-teacher style meeting takes place by the cells, where Daphne's dad forbids their relationship and nearly has a heart attack upon discovering the two idiots got secretly engaged. After being released and heading home, the scrawny stoner and the gluttonous mutt are attacked again by the freak, having to jump out the window and into suit-wearing Ed Machine's car.
Get in this car if you want to live.
They are tossed into the radio station with the former liar, Angel Dynamite, who tries to apologize, but the spoiled brats lock her in the studio and run. The suit's consolation prize is running into the Nazi parrot and ending up dead shortly after. Back at the old church, the nerd solves the riddle by overlapping the copied map with the real piece, guiding the group to a mysterious chest that's emptier than the sheriff's brain. The parrot arrives to steal the piece but gets a beatdown from the freak, who escapes with the disc. The trap addict angrily kicks the chest, triggers a water trap, and they are all vomited out of the cave. The blonde chases the freak to a cliff, almost dies, gets saved by the villain, but returns the favor by pinning the guy down. When the mask falls, the trauma hits hard. The monster is Mayor Jones himself, who admits to setting up the original team, framing the parrot, and worst of all, stealing the blonde leader from his biological parents. With his psyche ground to dust, the trap addict calls off his engagement to the preppy redhead and flees town in tears. While the stoner is shipped off to military school and the dog is sent to a farm, the psychopathic parrot escapes with the disc pieces, leaving the lonely mutt barking dramatic promises of revenge. Months after the team's pathetic end, the town has become an open-air asylum where a lunatic dressed as Cry-Baby Clown terrorizes the sheriff by throwing explosive baby bottles at his car. The new mayor barely sits in her chair before getting a visit from a masked ninja, who throws a folder on her desk and warns that the only way to save the town is by reuniting the meddling kids, handing over the talking dog's address before jumping out the window. Over at the prison farm, the cowardly mutt is in solitary confinement talking to a cow, but escapes with the help of the mayor and some overpriced cookies. The dog then simply steals a damn tank, invades the military academy, and rescues the stoner, crushing their commanding officer in the process. The dynamic duo soon finds their former blonde leader, who is now nothing but a bearded, one-shoed hobo knocking on doors looking for his biological parents. They drag the hobo back to town, but the crying clown attacks almost instantly. The trap addict is saved by one of his own nets triggered by the mysterious ninja, who takes off her mask and reveals herself to be the bespectacled nerd. The group cries and hugs, ignoring the fact that they hated each other just yesterday. They go after the preppy redhead to complete the clique, but find her on a date with a third-rate actor. She blatantly humiliates her hobo ex-fiancé, letting him know she swallowed her pride and is totally over this mystery life. The four remaining losers go to City Hall, where Crybaby Clown demands $1 million ransom, or he'll blow everything up. Like good washed-up heroes, they refuse the offer, and the villain detonates a bomb disguised as a giant diaper. Later, the suffering blonde tries to beg for the redhead's love again, but she slams the door in his face with full force, sending him into deep denial. Betting that she'd magically come back, the blonde hobo sets up a donut-themed trap that fails miserably. The clown escapes, blows up a fireworks factory, and sets the whole town on fire, while the protagonist watches the flames and finally realizes his love life and his team have turned to dust. Straight out of Russia, Velma and Hot Dog Water break into a museum to steal Baba Yaga's house on orders from the mysterious Mr. E, but the bizarre cabin comes alive and flattens the night guard. Meanwhile, the trap-obsessed blonde cries in the school hallways because he lost the redhead to a foreign actor and ruined the athletic scholarships of the school's meatheads. Velma introduces ex-con Hot Dog Water to fill the Daphne-sized hole in the group, and Shaggy and Scooby happily accept after shoving the suspicious candy she made in prison down their throats. The witch's motorized shack arrives in the US and kidnaps a useless assistant. The gang tracks the cabin into the woods, but Scooby catches Velma taking shady orders over the phone. After snitching on the nerd to Fred in his bedroom, which looks more like a radioactive pigsty, the trio confronts Velma right at the wooden house's door. She makes up a lame excuse about just wanting to protect the planispheric disc from the psychopathic parrot, and the house spits everyone out before leaking oil on the ground. Thanks to the new girl's theme park owning dad's connections and formerly rich Daphne's incredible ability to recognize Fabergé eggs thrown in the trash, they decide to follow the trail of lubricating fluid. The group intercepts the running real estate through the city and uses ropes to take the structure down like a Star Wars AT-AT.
Scooby, crossbows!
The witch rolls out and is revealed to be the museum curator, using robotic legs to smuggle luxury eggs through the black market. Everything ends with the team smiling, but Mr. E appears in the shadows to warn the new girl that Mystery Inc.'s days are numbered. While Fred cries his eyes out over girls and trapdoor hinges on a therapist's couch, Crybaby Clown invades the office and kidnaps the shrink, proving that not even therapy can save this town. Trying to be romantic, Fred drags Daphne's bed to the beach in the middle of the night, but she wakes up with a crab crawling under her sheets and dumps him monumentally. Ignoring their leader's mental breakdown, Velma and the new girl track clues while the diapered clown keeps abducting random citizens, including the city's PR guy and the hairdresser who just shaved Angel Dynamite's head. Fred decides to test a tracker by springing a trap, but ends up catching Daphne instead, discovering she's been microchipped in the leg like a stray dog. Before they can process the absurdity, the clown attacks by car. Fred saves his ex, but the Hollywood actor announces he's taking Daphne away to make her a movie star. Fred's brain short circuits and he passes out on the floor like a sack of rotten potatoes. After rebooting his nervous system, Fred solves the case and the gang rushes to the airport, where the clown has gagged his victims in a private jet. Shaggy and Scooby had already taken the controls, and when Fred jumps onto the moving plane and shakes the aircraft, the villain is knocked out cold purely from lacking a seatbelt. The mask falls to reveal Daphne's little boyfriend, who kidnapped real people just to have a free audience for his acting workshop. Daphne slaps the actor's face, ditches the famous life, and crawls back to the group, leaving poor Hot Dog Water unemployed and completely depressed in the corner. A banker freaks out and crashes his car into his own bank to escape a demonic cosplayer called Dreamweaver. Meanwhile, the group stuffs Hot Dog Water with food to drown their guilt over kicking her to the curb just because the titular redhead wanted back in. Investigating the delusions, the gang discovers that a fake food vendor and a rich guy were also attacked by the same dream monster, who demands to know about mazes and level 99. Shaggy finally admits that in their childhood, he and the incompetent Sheriff Stone used to play tabletop RPGs together, destroying imaginary lives until they abandoned the dice, trying to keep the sheriff awake to prevent the next attack. The starving duo fails miserably, and everyone gets sucked into the nightmare. The villain turns Shaggy into a pathetic rabbit and threatens Scooby with a tsunami until Fred throws a bucket of ice water on them in real life and ruins the magic. Back in the mental maze, the gang creates the most ridiculous illusion possible, pulling off fake masks under fake masks, from Sheriff to Fred to Shaggy to Daphne to Velma and finally Scooby, breaking the villain's mind so absurdly that he trips on his own cape and smashes his orb of power. The banker wakes up and confesses he spent millions embezzled from his own vault to build an inception machine just because the sheriff stole his little plastic figure when they were kids. When the bunch of slackers returns to Fred's house, the pigsty is spotlessly clean, and two random strangers spawn out of nowhere announcing they are the boys' biological parents. Shaggy and Scooby share a mouth-watering ice cream cone while the Cabinet of Curiosities rolls into town to scam suckers out of their money. The owner, Gene Shepard, shows off the Hodag of Terror, a creature from Wisconsin, the exotic land of cheese and caftans. Shaggy thinks it's fake and bounces, but that night, preppy Daisy Blake is attacked right in her bedroom. Meanwhile, Fred's real parents, Brad and Judy, finally decide to remember they have a son and invite him over to talk, shifting the blame for abandoning him onto Mayor Jones, who allegedly threatened to break their legs. They reveal they are also trap addicts, proving the kid inherited psychopathic genetics. Scooby, on the other hand, drools when he sees Nova, Fred's parents' little dog, already picturing them running in a field and sniffing each other's butts.
Wake up, Nova!
Say, anyone ever tell you
At Daphne's mom's party, Mr. Fussbuster's assistant cuts cheese using his feet, ensuring that authentic morning foot odor flavor. The hodog decides to jump through the window and terrorize the wealthy guests, stealing all their jewelry and taking the opportunity to kidnap poor Nova when the bell on her collar attracts the creature. The gang goes crying to the curiosity tent, finds the stolen loot, and Sheriff Stone does what he does best, arrests the wrong guy. The mayor rewards the useless team with a damp basement office at City Hall because that's where they belong. Velma, finally using her brain, realizes the bells control the beast. They set up a trap with a locked box and a bell, caging the creature, which was actually Roberto, a monkey in a costume commanded by the cheese maniac, Fussbuster. The guy confesses he trained the monkey back in Indonesia, but the animal got addicted to bells. All this to steal a 500-year-old cheese and flee to the Netherlands. Scooby throws the stinky cheese at the villain, saves his little doggy, and snaps the piece of dairy in half, revealing another piece of the planispheric disc. To top it all off, the psychopathic parrot Professor Pericles gathers the old guard of Mystery Inc. in the middle of nowhere to make an evil proposition. At the Pretensio Gallery, insufferable artist Randy Warsaw unveils his newest artwork titled Trash, which lives up to its name by coming alive, swallowing a singer, and spitting the poor girl back out as a solid gold statue. Mayor Nettles begs Mystery Inc. to handle this circus, and they arrive at the studio trying to blend in, which is an absolute disaster. Warsaw breaks Velma's glasses and declares her his new blind muse. Then he rips off Fred's shirt to call him Meat, puts an emo wig on Scooby, and turns Shaggy into an enslaved manual laborer. When Daphne tries to get his attention, the artist simply shoos her away, calling the girl boring and mocking her hair, causing irreparable emotional damage. While Shaggy suffers in slave labor, the artist's old muse is devoured by the walking piece of art and also becomes a golden ornament. Daphne catches one of the workers confessing to forging the boss's art to sell on the black market, but the trash monster swallows the forger and tries to make the redhead its dessert. The gang rescues the girl and the trash runs away, turning to dust and leaving another statue behind. In the moldy basement they call an office, Velma squints her myopic eyes and Sheriff Stone, surprisingly, connects the dots by saying the statues mimic a Bavarian painting full of accordions. Shaggy plays a song by his favorite polka band and discovers the reversed audio is identical to Warsaw's band's music. In the middle of a concert where Scooby tries to fake musical talent with his emo wig, the trash monster returns to swallow the arrogant artist. Fred triggers the usual trap, and Velma reveals the golden paralysis was just Bavarian beer yeast. The culprit is Butch Furbanks, an ex-polka player whose career sank when Warsaw turned him into a depressing intellectual rock band leader. As a thank you for saving his useless life, Warsaw fires all of them, calls the gang tedious, and kicks everyone out, while Cassidy Williams premieres a gossip radio show about the evil of Crystal Cove. The mayor decides it's a great idea to screen a horror movie in a cemetery, but the showing is interrupted when a real fog monster tears through the screen and makes everyone crap their pants. In the morning, the gang investigates the scene, and Velma suspects the gravedigger, Avalo, who exudes the same cursed energy as the creature. However, the guys have zero interest in the case because they discovered a house next to the cemetery full of gorgeous blonde Swedish girls. Shaggy and Fred instantly lose whatever brain cells they had left and turn into absolute simps for Mistress Motor and her 3 daughters, drooling over the girls and the tender meatballs they offer.
Eat just pounds and pounds of meatballs at every meal.
While Velma goes to do the heavy lifting alone, Daphne stays behind to keep an eye on the boys, purely consumed by the venom of jealousy. Velma rejects a job offer from Mr. E, and the psychopathic parrot also tries to lure the mysterious businessman back, but gets shot down because betrayal isn't easily forgiven. At the foreign girl's house, the monster attacks, but the simp boys activate hero mode and drive the beast away, just to earn little kisses and chocolates shaped like their ugly faces. Daphne, unable to handle the rejection, spirals into binge eating, devouring all the chocolate until her face turns into a volcano of grease-induced pimples. Velma discovers the gravedigger was denied a visa for being pure evil, but Fred and Shaggy are too busy wearing ridiculous peasant outfits and chopping wood for their blonde goddesses. Velma and Scooby decide to act alone, almost become prey in the cemetery but sniff out a suspicious odor and set up a trap with Sheriff Stone. They capture the monster, revealing it to be the gravedigger himself, trying to steal natural gas from a crypt just to prove to his family that he's a respectable villain. The reveal shows that the gas company owes millions to the Swedish girl's family. Hearing the word money, the mother packs their bags, grabs her daughters, and heads back to their home country, leaving Fred and Shaggy high and dry, crying in the corner. The sheriff lets the gravedigger go thanks to diplomatic immunity, while Mr. E and the parrot decide to put their pettiness aside and team up again with a single goal: erasing Cassidy Williams from existence. Two athletic meatheads climb Mount Diablo until they are thrown off the cliff by Dark Lilith, losing their lucky soccer ball and their dignity in the process. The gang of meddling kids goes to investigate and ends up in the camp of a tribe of radioactive hillbillies so ugly it hurts the soul, except for a guy named Ugly Jimmy, who ironically has the physique of a hand-sculpted Greek god, making Daphne drool uncontrollably over someone else's meat. They fall into a hole and find a batshit crazy explorer named Boro, who is literally in a romantic relationship with the lost soccer ball, affectionately rubbing her spherical lover's leather. This lunatic guides everyone to the villain's hideout, which by some cosmic coincidence is a stranded Spanish galleon in the middle of nowhere. After dodging deadly traps like it's a playground, they find another piece of the planispheric disc and a conquistador's diary. Apparently, these Spaniards found a crystal sarcophagus that melted their sanity, forcing the crew to bury the treasure and use the disc as a primitive GPS. Suddenly, Lilith swoops down from the skies wanting the round piece, forcing the team to tie the flying menace to the ship's mast. The problem is that this releases the entire vessel, sending the galleon surfing down the mountain in a chaotic and destructive ride of old wood. In the wreckage, Velma catches a familiar foul stench and unmasks the villain, revealing none other than hot dog water with pants full of helium gas. The smelly girl confesses her diabolical plan orchestrated by Mr. E, but decides to hand the disc piece over to Velma in a bizarre display of platonic love. As if the day couldn't get any more schizophrenic, the gang discovers that the ship's crash disfigured the muscular hillbilly's face, earning him the new name Handsome Jimmy from the bizarre tribe. As the van drives away, a conquistador's ghost pops up out of nowhere, whispers the word Nibiru with the most guttural voice imaginable, and vanishes, guaranteeing that the psychological trauma of this town never ends. While a generic couple swaps fluids in a car, a puritanical judge spawns from hell with a giant gavel to smash the sinners. The cowardly boyfriend runs away crying, but athletic Gary pops out of nowhere, kicks his soccer ball into the fanatic's face, and carries the girl to safety, stealing the loser's babe.
Yo, Thanksgiving guy, judge this!
You saved me. Oh, thank you.
The next day, our protagonist with zero social skills begs Daphne to go on a fake date with him, getting crushed by a rejection so brutal it would make anyone cry in the shower. The gang soon discovers that the maniacal Puritan is handing out hammerings all over town, even attacking the incompetent sheriff while he's trying to seduce the mayor. The bizarre detail is that the villain refuses to lay a finger on Velma, claiming she is an unattainable model of purity, which is just a polite way of saying she's untouchable. The team goes into pursuit mode when they see Gary playing the hero again by saving another defenseless girl. Suspecting this guy is a supernatural magnet for vulnerable women, they decide to spy on his best friend, Ethan, who spends hours beating up trash cans in his dark bedroom. The judge attacks again. Ethan fakes fighting the masked guy and pins the blame on poor Dougal, who gets beaten up by the villain before he can defend himself. But the lie of these overly emotional simps has its days numbered. Velma discovers that 2 costumes went missing from the theater, and Fred finally uses his bizarre obsession with traps to do something useful, asking for help from his biological parents, who are just as crazy as he is. The net drops, and 2 Puritans are captured at once. The pathetic plan of Gary and Ethan is revealed. The 2 losers took turns wearing the psycho costume and playing the hero to get hugs from women, leaving cleat marks at the crime scene like absolute idiots. While Fred has his picture-perfect family moment, Spy Cassidy watches everything from the bushes, proving that nobody in this town has an ounce of privacy. A family vacationing in a library is brutally terrorized by a buff Egyptian god, and since disaster attracts our protagonists, the gang's van gets crushed by an avalanche avalanche on the ski road. Stranded in the middle of nowhere, they break into the Burlington Library to beg for shelter, being greeted by the depressed manager Dan, who gives a tour before letting the teenagers loose on the property. It doesn't take 2 minutes for Shaggy and Scooby to raid the kitchen and stuff their faces with food, only to be hunted by the cook, who turns into a bloodthirsty red monster. The madness escalates when Daphne tries to take a bath and is cornered by a demonic gorgon, while Velma overhears the Dean conspiring in the shadows. In another corner, Fred and the dog run into the cook, throwing raw chickens at their faces, turning the place into a literal madhouse. Trying to save his friends, Fred busts the bedroom door open and witnesses the biggest humiliation of his life, Daphne grabbing and making out with Shaggy, purely because she was delirious and thought the starving string bean was our blonde, trap-obsessed leader. While the dog tries to escape an Anubis in the bathroom, only to wake up drooling on the floor, Velma runs for her life, fleeing a stuffed orangutan and a ghost train running over books. The bespectacled nerd finally puts 2 and 2 together and realizes this whole drug-free psychedelic trip was caused by toxic fumes from the wood burning in the fireplace. They set a trap and capture manager Dan, whose great evil plan to shut down the entire library was purely because he couldn't stand the cold anymore and wanted to move to the beach. With the freezing idiot in jail, the Dean declares her bizarre love for the poultry-throwing cook. Suddenly, a colossal book flies through the window and lands on their laps, revealing itself to be an alchemical instruction manual for the damn planispheric disc. Far away, nosy Cassidy breaks into Velma's room and spreads photos of the Darrow family on the wall, rubbing it in our faces that the well of secrets in this wretched town is bottomless. A World War II Nazi robot decides to cancel Cassidy Williams's radio show in the most explosive way possible, forcing her to fight for her life until the junk pile blows itself up and sends the entire building sky high. When the useless sheriff tries to use his half a brain cell to investigate the crime, the mayor shuts him up by promising a new pool, proving that justice literally costs a cold dip. The gang of meddlers arrives just in time to see another robot turn to dust and discovers that Cassidy has been hunted by these tin cans all week. Realizing the attacks are coming from the bottom of the sea, Daphne recruits 2 kids she babysits and a bizarre seal also named Scooby to pilot a submarine straight to the Midnight Zone. Completely ignoring child labor laws, they arrive at the ruins of a sunken Spanish mission, but soon get a subaquatic beatdown from more Nazi robots. Trying to fix the sub in a secret base, the geniuses realize they've broken into the exact factory where the machines are made. They fall through the ventilation shafts like trash, run from the robots, and trip over the rotting corpse of Abigail Gluck, whom Velma recognizes instantly. The true master of the factory is revealed to be the psychopathic parrot Professor Pericles, who stole the place to look for a piece of the planispheric disc and was using a hologram of the dead woman to distract the machines. Pericles cowardly flees and activates the self-destruct sequence, leaving Cassidy behind to be blown to bits, buying just enough time for the useless gang, the kids, and that damn seal to escape with their lives. The smooth-brained sheriff and the mayor try to have a barbecue on a radioactive destroido lot, but their romantic date is ruined by a giant mutant bear that sends them both running. The mayor cries for help and begs Fred to hunt down the anomaly on company grounds, since the corporation has sovereignty and the police are just window dressing. Meanwhile, Mr. E tries to convince Fred's biological parents to steal the planispheric disc pieces from their own son, showing that family love isn't worth a dime. Investigating the site, the gang discovers water clogged with lithium and is hunted by the bear all the way to George Avocado's farm. He's foaming at the mouth with rage because the contamination turned his crop into mutant avocados with spider legs. Scooby sniffs out a security badge, giving them a free pass to break into Destroido, but Mr. E uses invisibility suits with Fred's parents to spy on the kids and sets up an ambush at the company. The gang dodges mutant atrocities, tries to hack Destroido's files, and runs from the bizarre bear using the radioactive animals themselves as bait. They try to blow the whistle on the conspiracy at the police station, but Mr. E is already there demanding the teen's arrest with a DVD full of evidence, until the mayor puts a stop to the nonsense. Trying to capture the monster at a corporate ball, Scooby and Shaggy trip over a time bomb, but the mutant bear surprisingly helps carry the explosive, which Fred throws straight at the remaining spider avocados, annihilating them. The bear is unmasked as the head of security, who grew excessively hairy after using Destroido products and just wanted to expose the company. company. Taking pity on the furry guy, the gang lets him go, having no idea that the bomb was planted by Mr. E and the sadistic parrot, who are now watching everything through the cameras. Drooling at the thought of seeing Fred's parents stab him in the back, an insufferable brat with a giant boombox gets some divine punishment when a monster named Krampus attacks and turns the kid's hair completely white from pure terror. Fred, flaunting his pathetic naivete, shows his corrupt biological parents exactly where he keeps his pieces of the planispheric disc, while Velma vomits exposition about Nibiru, a planetary alignment that happens every 3 millennia. The gang meets up with the local authorities at an arcade, but Mr. E and his goons sneak in to try and loot the mystery machine. Suddenly, Krampus invades the place, traumatizing the sheriff and 3 roller skating girls, leaving everyone with elderly hair. Fred's trash parents try to steal the briefcase amidst the chaos, but are stopped by a laser grid, proving the blonde guy finally learned how to protect his toys. The gang goes hunting for the creature, and Fred admits that the monster's punishment makes him miss his ex-fake dad, Mayor Jones, showing that he urgently needs therapy. Daphne notices that the costume of Charlie the Haunted Robot is missing. They go visit the worst kid in town at juvie, but Krampus busts into the place and drags the child criminal to an abandoned doll factory. When the gang finally captures the monster, they discover it was just the robot wearing the costume.
Charlie the Haunted Robot?
Mr. E flees believing he's winning the game, but upon reaching his secret lair, he realizes his own disc pieces have been swiped and replaced with a DVD. In the video, the meddlers rub it in his face that they orchestrated this whole charade from the beginning. They use the juvie girl, a nerd controlling the robot, Fred's fake dad, and hot dog water to steal the villain's items while he was distracted. Fred sends a massive screw you to his biological parents, telling them he's not coming to dinner, and Scooby even kidnaps their dog to complete the humiliation. When the gang puts all the disc pieces together, a crystal coffin's eyes light up out of nowhere, whispers the word Nibiru, and lets out an evil laugh that promises absolute doom. 5 years in the past, we see a dragon robot taking a beating from a guard before a scientist saves a dog's life, in a convenient flashback that you've probably already forgotten. In the present, the gang of deadbeats goes to visit Fred in his homeless van. Velma tries to decipher the disc with a nerdy contraption, but they hear a noise in the archives room and come face to face with the Blue Falcon and Dynamut fighting the exact same dragon from the past. After the beast escapes, our attention-starved detectives decide to help the hero hunt down the metallic reptile. They break into Destroido headquarters with the subtlety of an elephant in a minefield, leaving Mr. E pissed off at such sheer stupidity, but the alarm goes off because the dragon also decided to attack the building. The monster, controlled by a villain named Dr. Zin, tries to kidnap Dynamut for his power source, but is so incompetent that he grabs Scooby by mistake and takes off into the sky. Zin tries to interrogate his victim at his secret base, only to realize he snatched a cookie-addicted Fleabag instead of the cybernetic cyborg. The gang doesn't waste any time. They invade the villain's island fortress flying in the Blue Falcon's car and beat the crap out of all the armed security guards like they're professional MMA fighters. The hero reveals that his dog uses the power cell the villain wants so badly, but Zin drops the dramatic bomb that he only needed the battery to get his own daughter stuck out of the dragon suit. Dynamut jumpstarts it with a power cable, ejecting the girl from the armor, and Zin thanks them for their help by activating the island's self-destruct sequence, leaving everyone to blow up. The gang calmly floats away to safety under the moonlight, while Shaggy tells the Blue Falcon to chill out, since deep down, the villain just loved his daughter as much as they loved their dogs. The town's historical society is obsessed with a play about Friar Serra and his pet donkey, Porto. The nostalgic vibe dies instantly when the supposed original mummy of the friar jumps out of a box and attacks the actors. The next night, Daphne has to smuggle Fred and his van into her own house. The reason? The guy smells like toxic waste thanks to some horrifying handmade soap he made himself. As they settle into a room that miraculously has a bathroom, Shaggy gets a message from Vincent Van Ghoul begging the gang to save the play. They take the free gig and find the former rich kid George Avocados working as a janitor, while the psychopathic parrot Pericles orders Fred's biological parents to steal the damn disc. Velma goes to to research the friar and gets nearly crushed by the living mummy, who warns them not to mess with history or they'll trigger the apocalypse of Nibiru. Completely ignoring the warning, just like you ignore your responsibilities, they put on the play anyway. The mummy crashes the stage, chases Shaggy, and ends up falling straight into a trap Fred hid in the set. The mask comes off and reveals Avocados, who just wanted to find his dad's lost diamond. However, the gang discovers he was just mummy number 2 in this circus. They head back to the basement and find the original dehydrated corpse of Friar Sarah waiting in the dark. The historical zombie starts spitting out all the town's lore, revealing that the ancient Crystal Cove sank because his donkey Porto was corrupted by the dark power of the disc and blew the whole place up. The animal ran off with a piece, became gator dinner, and the friar hid another piece inside a wheel of cheese. To top it all off, the corpse warns them that every detective group's mascot is the catalyst for all the disasters. He points his rotting finger at Scooby, warns him that the dog is going to die, and turns to dust, leaving our cookie addict in the middle of an absolutely justifiable panic attack.
The dog dies.
The dog dies? Is he talking about me?
Our troop of deadbeats is in the middle of a discussion about cursed treasures when Velma's computer spits out the name Mr. P. Love, followed by some random coordinates. Before they can do anything useful, Sheriff Stone busts down the door freaking out about a galactic war and having flashbacks of when he was 14 and got abducted to have a chip shoved up his nose. Amidst this collective delusion, a valuable GPS is stolen from the mall, and security cameras show the silhouette of a child, a woman, and a genuine extraterrestrial. The gang hits the road to investigate, but a glowing sphere crosses the sky. The mystery machine dies out of nowhere, and they start running in circles in an alien cornfield like a bunch of scared idiots. Absolutely certain that the little green men have arrived, they go to Velma's mom, who is ecstatic to see her daughter believing in conspiracies. She hypnotizes the sheriff, discovers the aliens want to devour his brilliant mind, and right after that, a Nordic extraterrestrial steals a spacesuit from the museum, fleeing in a beat-up RV. To protect his own assets, Daphne's dad parks a luxury car right in the middle of the dining room. Meanwhile, the parallel investigation reveals that the sheriff's desk drawer was stuffed with rotten shellfish, perfectly explaining his hallucinations. In the dead of night, the ETs steal the car from inside the mansion, but the gang chases the spaceship RV, throws glue on the asphalt, and traps everyone in a net. The masks fall, revealing the O'Flaherty family, hillbilly con artists dressed up to steal electronics. Everything has a stupid explanation. The sphere was a weather balloon, the van stalled because of an AC overload, and the crop circles were just a needy farmer's declaration of love. After the arrest, Fred follows the computer's coordinates to a cemetery, digs up Mr. P. Love's grave, and finds a rusty flintlock pistol. However, when they return to Town Hall, the entire building is engulfed in flames. And up on the roof, watching the chaos from the front row, Fred's biological parents activate their invisibility suits, proving once and for all that they are the biggest psychopaths in town. A useless farmer is drinking lemonade when his shack is absolutely swallowed by a herd of demonic skeletal cows. Meanwhile, our gang of deadbeats is at a diner complaining about moldy cheese served by a bitter waitress who warns them that the whole town is out of food. Determined not to starve to death like you at the end of the month, they go investigate and find out the cows chew through absolutely everything in their path, forcing the mystery machine to fire up jet thrusters so they don't become bovine chow. The bespectacled nerd pulls out her map and realizes the path of destruction points straight to Destroido, and who else would be behind mutant cows if not the psychopathic parrot Pericles. Using a backdoor hot dog water left in the system, they spy on Mr. E, humiliating the bird for burning cash, creating bizarre cow-bee piranha hybrids made solely to destroy Crystal Cove. Daphne has an epiphany and deduces that all the horned beasts are male workers, which means there's a hidden queen stuffing her face somewhere. They steal the mayor's helicopter and raid the bovine hive, firing smoke grenades without mercy. Shaggy and Scooby grab the queen's egg and lure the hybrid freak into a trap, allowing the mayor to hoist the monster into the air and make the whole herd chase after mommy. But Pericles refuses to accept defeat and orders Fred's trash biological parents to fire a missile at the aircraft. The shot destroys the tail rotor, causing the little dog Nova to plummet into the middle of the raging herd. The queen is hurled into the ocean and the piranha cows swim away, proving the gang just released an invasive species to destroy the local marine ecosystem. With Nova unconscious and rushed to the hospital, Pericles swears revenge while stroking his own bruised ego. A D-list reporter is interviewing a former manager about a ska band that died in a plane crash 30 years ago when the musicians themselves decide to return from hell to ruin the live broadcast. The meddling gang goes snooping in a record store and finds out the lead singer resorted to cheap voodoo magic to put bizarre curses on everyone back in the day. The zombies crash a club and force the extras to shake it non-stop. A doctor warns that if these idiots don't stop dancing in 24 hours, they'll turn into permanent cataleptic vegetables. Trying to play the heroes, the team heads to the cemetery where the useless, starving Shaggy falls face first into an open grave and finds the manager tied up inside. The undead mount dirt bikes and kick off a frantic chase, proving that even rotting corpses have more swagger than you. The washed-up band climbs onto the town hall roof and plays a cursed song that makes Fred, Daphne, Velma, and the adults lose control of their own bodies and start dancing like maniacs. Only Shaggy, for being musically tone-deaf, and Scooby, for being a mangy mutt, are unaffected. The two sneak onto a fancy yacht in disguise and beg the Hex Girls to save the day with a magical battle of the bands. With a supreme power chord, the rockers crush the ska sorcery and free the town. With the zombies locked up, the gang unmasks them all, revealing they faked their own deaths, but took so long to write a new song that the ska genre died before they did. At Shaggy's house, the Hex Girls sing the musical notes hidden on the planispheric disc, making the piece of junk spin and spit out new coordinates. Fred drags everyone out until they find a smelly helmet belonging to Old Man Shelton, revealing it to be the second key to the mystery. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the little dog Nova snaps out of her coma just to look at Scooby and warn him that an apocalypse called Nibiru is coming, before passing out again. A cheesy cooking show is interrupted when a gluten demon spawns from a pan and swallows the host alive. While the gang tries to figure out what the hell this Nibiru thing is, that cuck adventurer Rick Spartan and his sidekick Kachinga bust down the door of a pizzeria by throwing food through the window, but the massive monster shows up, swallows the dough whole, and casually bails. At Destroido headquarters, Mr. E locks the psychopathic parrot Professor Pericles out of the system, declaring the bird is now just a useless shoulder ornament. Pericles doesn't swallow the humiliation and starts plotting his payback. Back to the meddling idiots, Spartan decides to build a bread trap and sends the girls to get ingredients for a potion, while Shaggy and Scooby are given the sacred mission of literally swallowing all the gluten in town to starve the freak. The bespectacled nerd searches an abandoned warehouse full of ingredients and almost becomes the demon's dinner, but Kachinga saves the day by throwing his gluten-free lunch in the beast's face. Meanwhile, Fred and Spartan set up the giant trap, and Shaggy and Scooby turn into two massive balls of lard after emptying out 5 entire restaurants. The monster finally falls into the net, but it's so heavy, it breaks through instantly. That's when the morbidly obese duo decides to wrestle sumo style and crushes the creature against the floor. The monster is unmasked as the very host from the beginning, who edited the video to fake being eaten because she wanted to open a carb-loaded restaurant and decided to destroy the competition by devouring the entire town's food herself. While being dragged to jail, she drops a bowl, revealing it to be the third piece of the mystery. Fred kicks the fatties out of the van, telling them to walk it off to burn calories. Meanwhile, Mr. E tries to officially fire Pericles, but discovers the damn bird injected mutant cobra larvae into his spine and now has total control over his life via remote control, promising to steal the disc and obliterate the gang once and for all. We meet a useless family getting robbed by a lunatic dressed as an asphalt pirate, the Dandy Highwayman, who blows up their car and simply steals the wife using the supreme, irresistible power of a British accent. Meanwhile, Scooby, the snack addict, is clogging his veins with donuts and hallucinating with Nova, warning him that the apocalypse is coming.
Nibiru is coming.
At Velma's house, her mom has decided the best way to build a pool is by practicing domestic terrorism with barrels of dynamite, all under the seductive gaze of a foreign pool boy. The gang figures out that this colonial Ghost Rider cosplayer is kidnapping all the women in town, including Daphne's mom and the mayor, just by paying attention to what they say. They head to the library to investigate, where Scooby falls asleep again like a retiree and goes on an astral trip with a bizarre author in a red room. Velma finds a page with the fourth piece of the mystery, mystery. To lure the villain, Shaggy and Scooby dress up as two rich babes by the side of the road, but the madman has high standards and prefers to kidnap Daphne. In captivity, surrounded by snobby housewives, she sends a text to Fred and drops a hint for the villain to go after Velma's mom because she's richer and loves to gossip. When the biker arrives in the backyard to rob the old lady, surprise, it was Velma in disguise. Fred and Shaggy throw nets, shove the guy into the TNT shed, and blow the poor bastard up without an ounce of pity. Under the mask was the virgin librarian who just wanted to be the main character of a fanfic, discovering that the secret to love was riding a motorcycle and pretending to care about other people's lives. In the end, Scooby passes out again and finds out from an alien entity inside the dog's body that Earth is about to be swallowed by Nibiru, and he needs to destroy a crystal sarcophagus before the ancient evil gets out. Our meddling mythbusters enter a supposedly haunted house that turns out to be nothing more than a loud meowing cat, proving the local real estate market is a scam. Fred announces he needs to hide the planispheric disc, but when he goes to check the basement, his own reflection decides it's tired of being an extra and pulls the gang leader into the mirror. Fred wakes up in an apocalyptic version of Crystal Cove full of skeletons, where he finds an elderly, washed-up version of Daphne. The old prune swears the disc accelerated time and begs him to find the relic to save the day. Meanwhile, in the real world, a fake Fred shows up, takes control of the van, and tells Shaggy to drive. The gang immediately realizes something is off. After all, the true trap-obsessed weirdo would never let another dude touch the gear shift of his mystery machine. In the Upside Down, Fred drags old Daphne through fake locations to test her loyalty, while fake Fred guides the gang to the real ones. After dodging an army of bones, the real Fred takes the imposter to the Steel Co. factory, and the two realities collide. The two Freds start brawling, and Daphne uses the ultimate tactic to find out who the original is by asking about his feelings, a riddle that paralyzes any emotionally unavailable teenager. The masks come off, and we discover the imposters were Fred's biological parents, who got plastic surgery and built a ridiculous movie-set town just to con their own son. But before this family drama gets worse, the psychopathic parrot Professor Pericles shows up with his tin can army and threatens Daphne's life. Fred hands over the disc on a silver platter, and the demonic bird rushes to a secret Destroido lair, slotting in the final piece and declaring that his supreme master will finally swallow this world. The cowardly mutt wakes up in a cold sweat after having nightmares about an old dancer and a monstrous freak coming for his soul. To cure this psychological trauma, the gang decides to break into the house of Professor Horatio Caron, a hypnotherapist who coincidentally is the dancing TikToker from Scooby's dreams. The old man freaks out at first, but soon admits he lost his better half in a waiting room dimension between time and space, warning that if the dream monster catches Scooby, he's going straight to the great gig in the sky in real life. With the brilliant idea of taking a collective astral trip, the professor lays the gang on the floor and turns on a giant hypnosis wheel, giving them exactly 1 hour to solve the mystery before getting trapped in an eternal coma. In the Beyond, they meet the pure souls of everyone who's ever been screwed over in this town, including the useless ex-mayor, who reveals the dream monster was the main inspiration for his own ridiculous villain suit. The freak spawns out of nowhere, and the gang scatters, stumbling into a bizarre multiverse of mystery solvers from the past. Fred finds Wild West cowgirls, Shaggy and Scooby bump into some smelly Latin bandoleros, and the girls find rich snobs and cultists, all holding the mysterious keys. The monster chases them into a temple, takes a blast of celestial light to the face, and cowardly flees. The alien dog Nova shows up to give the final history lesson, revealing that the first mystery solvers tried to destroy the evil sarcophagus with the heart of the jaguar, but a bunch of greedy conquistadors stole the stone thinking it was treasure. Fred uses his last few seconds to make peace with the soul of his fake dad. Velma hands over the magic talisman, waking the gang up in the real world, and giving the old professor his groove back, leaving our traumatized teens in total shock, but with the final mission to find the stone heart before doomsday. Enrique Andalusosa, Velma's mom's former fling, is playing Indiana Jones in the jungle searching for the heart of the jaguar, but ends up getting beat up by angry vines near the Temple of the Dark Altar. Meanwhile, our troop of slackers drags Mistress Dinkley down to the Yucatan to hunt for the exact same trinket, popping up at the old man's antique shop. There, they're greeted with stones thrown by the cheated wife, who blames Velma's mom for her husband's disappearance, proving that family drama is scarier than any ghost. With no time for Jerry Springer-level drama, they come back at night only to be attacked by an unhinged Mayan priestess telling them to get out of the temple. Obviously, these stubborn kids ignore the threat and dive into the bush. Arriving at the temple, the place is infested with diabolical traps, but Fred finally gets to use his repressed lust for trap engineering to humiliate the ancient architects and overcome all the obstacles. They get their hands on the heart of the jaguar right as the priestess pops up trying to ruin the party, but the useless lady ends up falling into the very trap she activated. Ripping off the mask, to no one's surprise, it's Enrique himself cross-dressing in a pathetic hope to win back Mistress Dinkley. Too bad she's already well taken care of by Velma's dad, leaving the ex-lover at rock bottom. The betrayed wife appears out of nowhere, spits venom, and throws the trash out, giving her husband away to whoever wants him. But the only one who wants that walking disaster is Lieutenant Tomina Kosensky, a bizarre spy friend of the mayor who had a prophetic nightmare and is now the group's official babysitter to make sure they get back to Crystal Cove alive. As everyone bails, Velma has a mental breakdown, realizing she spent her whole life being an arrogant, clueless skeptic since magic was real all along. Her mom gives her a miraculous, comforting hug, proving that even the apocalypse has its cute moments before everything goes down the drain. The troop lands in Crystal Cove thinking they'll get some peace, but the town has turned into a ghost town desert out of a Western movie. After dropping Velma's mom at the museum, they discover the citizens have literally been swallowed by the earth, getting front row seats to watch Mayor Nettles and Sheriff Stone sink into the ground like a cheap magic trick. Hiding out at Fred's house, they barely start gossiping about the planispheric disk, Nibiru, and the planetary alignment when the floor decides to try and swallow them too. Instead of being sucked in, they come face to face with a mole tank spitting out fully armed Nazi robots. But these pieces of scrap metal messed with the wrong guy, because Fred rigged his house with a sick arsenal of traps that turn the robots into metallic confetti. Heading down into the underworld, they find the entire town enslaved by the psychopathic parrot and the original Mystery Incorporated. Time for the suicide mission. The stoner and the dog disguise themselves as robots, while the rest armor up the mystery machine to turn it into a literal tank.
The Crystal Covite Urians are ready. The uprising should be happening any minute now.
The attack begins, and even Sheriff Stone decides to be useful by leading a fistfight rebellion against the tin cans. In the middle of the chaos, Pericles recognizes Shaggy and orders the poor guy to be gunned down, but Scooby goes full Rambo, grabs a machine gun, and unleashes canine fury to protect his owner, turning the tide for the enslaved citizens. With no way out, the robots stop the van, forcing Fred to blow up his own metal baby. Shaggy and Scooby cry rivers, thinking their friends became barbecue, but the Three Stooges were actually steering the machine by remote control from another car, laughing at everyone's faces. Meanwhile, Pericles achieves his goal and uses the disc to open the gates to the evil entity. He waltzes in, shaking his tail feathers, hoping the meddlers follow him so he can finally kill that mangy dog. With the relics stuffed in their backpacks, our favorite idiots swallow the bait and march straight into the Doomsday Portal. Trapped in a fancy crystal sarcophagus, the evil entity is just waiting for its puppets to unlock the door so it can set Crystal Cove on fire. Our troop follows the old Mystery Inc. through the tunnels, and Nerd Velma quickly realizes the gates are based on the 4 elements, and they need to shove the Dream World keys in backwards. The sadistic parrot yells for them to open everything, revealing he's holding Marcy hostage. With no choice, they comply. Fred tells everyone to hold on and activates the air gate, which turns into a giant vacuum cleaner sucking up the Nazi robots. He plugs the hole with the boat canvas, revealing a bizarre dimension full of floating islands. Taking advantage of the mess, Marcy puts Pericles in an armbar and tells the gang to run. She makes a beautiful sacrifice, but Fred's biological mom uses her husband's belt to trip the girl, leaving her to be gunned down by the robots. Scooby even hears the sounds of the carnage, but Velma just swallows her tears and tells them to keep going. They ram through the second gate and are hunted by a stupid stone monster that Fred tricks into slamming into the wall, clearing the water passage. Using the conquistador helmet, they plummet down a waterfall straight into an interdimensional ocean, Diving down to the final gate, Shaggy tries to take a shot with a flintlock pistol, but the bullet just bounces around and almost kills everyone. Daphne uses her brain cells to jam the flint into the keyhole, unlocking the last door. They finally reach the lava sauna, find the cursed treasure, and come face to face with the entity. The beast rubs it in their faces that it orchestrated everything, manipulating every generation of idiots just to reach this exact moment of the Nibiru alignment. Shaggy almost falls into depression thinking their friendship is a sham, but the redhead beats her chest and says their love is genuine and no one is going to erase that. Filled with determination, Scooby lifts the heart of the jaguar to smash the crystal, but Pericles spawns from hell, snatches the spear from his paws, and opens the sarcophagus, finally unleashing the supreme evil, while the gang just watches with dumb looks on their faces. The possessed alien dog dumps the lore on us, revealing that the evil entity is just a rogue Anunnaki who spent millennia at the bottom of a crystal sarcophagus, manipulating meddling teenagers so it could break free. Down in the lava cave, the creature tries to devour our cowardly mutt, but the psychopathic parrot Pericles decides it's a great idea to offer up his own little bird body to take in all the thick, dark essence of the villain. The beast injects its power into the bird, stretching him out until he turns into an absurdly deformed giant octopus. Fred's useless biological parents try to bootlick the new deity, but end up being swallowed whole like free bar snacks. The monster sends its Nazi robots after everyone, and the canine protagonist tries to jam the spear of the heart of the jaguar straight into the beast's head, but the tip snaps instantly, proving that size and rigidity really do matter in combat. Mr. E tries to play hero by decapitating a robot, but 5 seconds later, he also becomes giant squid dinner, while the entity spews lava all over the town and opens a portal to vomit out its legion of demons. Amidst the carnage, time freezes, and the dog has an embarrassing epiphany that the true secret weapon wasn't a mystical artifact, but rather the power of friendship, exactly like those generic animes that make you cry. The bespectacled nerd realizes the weak point is the sarcophagus itself, so the gang starts a game of passing the broken wood from hand to hand, until Scooby delivers a dropkick, driving the wood into the crystal and creating a black hole that sucks the bootleg Cthulhu right out of existence. A blinding light flashes and everyone wakes up in a terrifyingly perfect alternate reality. The universe has been reset and the evil never existed.
We did it!
The incompetent sheriff is now a productive family man. Fred's parents are loving doctors. Daphne finally has the rich snob's approval to get married. The stoner has become a prestigious chef. Velma has fully embraced the rainbow with her genius girlfriend. And the parrot is now just a docile mascot for a vegan company. But the truth is, a world without costume psychopaths is boring as hell for these trauma addicts. Lucky for them, Fred's adoptive dad hands them a record from Harlan Ellison, the new Mr. E of this dimension, warning them that they slipped through the time rift and inviting the group to study at Miskatonic University. Without a second thought, they throw some paint on the white van, floor the gas pedal, and flee from this perfectly healthy life to go back to hunting demons on the road, making the alien dog proud from the great beyond.